Good morning. I'm Arjay Balinbin, your moderator for this session. Welcome to Business World Insight, an online forum series. And today's conversation will focus on safe banking, data security, and online payment services. Online banking has become one of the accelerated lifestyles during the pandemic. As much as many have enjoyed the benefits of banking at their fingertips, awareness should nonetheless be raised in keeping accounts safe from cyber threats and fraudulent schemes. Today, we will talk about how security issues in digital finance are being addressed and how consumers themselves can ensure that they are transacting safely. To our audience, please reserve your questions after all the session speakers have given their opening statements and our Q&A. Now, let me introduce our speakers. Our first speaker is a principal in CSEP Gores Vilayo and company's technology consulting practice focusing on cybersecurity. He is a veteran in the cybersecurity profession with nearly 25 years of experience as a consultant and as a chief information security officer. He has held cybersecurity leadership roles as the CISO of finance. As the CISO of financial services institutions in the Philippines, Asia, and North America, or New York in particular. Please welcome Mr. Philip Casanova. Philip, good morning.
Good morning, everyone, and happy Friday. RJ, are we going to proceed with the talk?
So let me introduce, sir, the second speaker. Our second speaker is the co-founder and CEO of PearlPay, a seasoned IT executive. Spark has worked with the number one bank in the Philippines, where he managed the first dual interface EMV card project in the country, including MasterCard, Visa, and Amex EMV migration. He has almost 2 decades of financial IT experience in consumer finance banking, debit cards, prepaid cards, e commerce, mobile payments, and other consumer loans. Ladies and gentlemen, Sparky Perreras. Good morning, Sparky.
Good morning, RJ. Good morning, everyone. So once again, my name is Sparky Perreras, co-founder and CEO at PearlPay. So at PearlPay, we help the hundreds of rural banks in Southeast Asia, in the Philippines and Indonesia, to transform digitally. So from passbook technology to digital banking technology. So as of today, we have 200 rural bank signups in the Philippines and 252 rural banks in Indonesia. So and for the rural banks, they need to update their technology so they can participate and thrive in this digital economy.
Thank you, Sparky. Now, I think we can go back to Philip for his opening statements. Philip?
Yeah, sorry about that. I thought I was just being introduced. I'm Philip Casanova, and happy to be here. I'm one of the partners handling the cybersecurity practice of SGV. And actually, SGV has been doing cybersecurity for the past 25 years. And we have three partners actually handling the cybersecurity practice of the firm. And to date, I think we have about 250 to 60 cybersecurity consultants, probably one of the largest in the country. And it's interesting because many of our clients are banks, and it's just fitting that I'm happy to be here to share our insights also about the topic about banking and also on cybersecurity. So happy to be here and looking forward to the discussions later on.
Yes, thank you very much, Philip. Now, a third speaker. Our third speaker has had more than a decade of experience in the technology industry, having worked in ABS Civians, Interactive, Multiply.com, Pocket Market. He is also part of the leadership team of 8 Ventures, a technology holdings company behind MoneyBees, a BSP licensed virtual currency exchange. Other crypto related companies like Paylance and Orbit, and cybersecurity company like, of course, Secuna. Please welcome Paolo del Puerto. Hi, Paolo.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for inviting me here. I'm very happy to be here. Secuna, what we do is, we are one of the biggest community-powered cybersecurity testing platforms in the Philippines. So what we do is we connect companies to our community of highly vetted cybersecurity researchers. So currently, we have around 900 plus registered cybersecurity researchers from around the world. And we have more than a dozen companies already using the platform, where the researchers look for vulnerabilities continuously and report each vulnerability that they find to the to the companies. So this is one thing that we're trying to do in cybersecurity, to add on to the more traditional way of testing applications and websites. The more traditional way is the VAPT, right? So vulnerability assessment penetration testing. Now we're introducing to the Philippines and in Southeast Asia a way to tap a community of cyber researchers for continuous testing. Right. So yeah, and I'm looking forward to further discussions about the topic later.
Thank you, Paolo. Now, for our Q&A, let's have our speakers back on the screen. Now, to start this conversation, I'd like to ask Philip of SGV and Company. Sir, can you give us a background about how cybersecurity being a top concern and a major risk to be anticipated among banks and financial institutions, of course, in this day and age?
Yeah, I find it. Let me answer that with this. I find it very interesting on how you narrated the topic for this morning in the brief in the Facebook page, and I do agree everything has been accelerated with this, and especially banks and many financial institutions are moving into digital platforms, and this goes also with an accompanying risk. The more online activities, the more online fraud and cyber attacks we see also. Actually, there was this meme. There was this meme going around the internet asking the question, how on who accelerated the digital transformation initiative of your company? Letter A, is it the CFO? Letter B, is it the CTO? Letter C, is it the COO, CEO? Or letter D, COVID-19? And we all know it was a good caricaturing of what's really happening, because really this pandemic has caused us to rethink and to move many of our workloads in digital platforms. We have also seen about 21% increase of frauds in e-commerce since January 2020. And we not only on those fraud, but we also see about 109% increase in frauds, and 21% increase in e-commerce transactions. That's what I meant. 21% on e-commerce transactions and about 109% increase in fraud. So it's a significant increase actually. And also, what we're seeing right now is that we conducted a survey with our clients, and we asked the questions on if they experienced any kind of cyber attacks recently. And we asked 5 cyber attacks: phishing, malware, ransomware, insider threat, zero-day exploits, and denial of service. This is a global survey that we conducted in Ernst & Young, since we are part of Ernst & Young. In phishing alone, 69% of them said they significantly experience increase in phishing attacks. Malware, 54% increase. Ransomware, about 49% of the survey respondents said it increased as well. So forth with insider threat and zero-day vulnerabilities and denial of service as well. So there's really an increase of attacks right now. What we also seen is we asked also the question if they deployed any new technologies during the pandemic in response to the distributed environment that we have right now on a work from home setting. And it turns out that 40% of our respondents said yes, they did deploy a new technologies. However, 60% of those 40% who said that they deployed new technologies, they did not do any security tests or the proper data privacy checking. So right now, from the way that we're seeing it, there's companies are, especially financial institutions, are being forced to rethink, to imagine how they're going to survive in this new business environment because everything is accelerated. And we see that to be able to survive, there are three things that a company must do. Um, they must maintain customer trust, at the same time providing convenience, and at the same time providing security. These things are related. Probably I can expound on that later on because that's my central message for this discussion. It's about trust, convenience, and about security. Now, going back to the question of if cybersecurity is a top concern, in a survey that we also did in Ernst& Young, middle of the year, we asked the basic question: is cybersecurity still an important topic in the board or executive management? And 72% of our respondents said yes, it's still an important. More than ever right now, we need to discuss cybersecurity. But strikingly, in the same survey, we asked how often is cybersecurity being discussed at the board or executive management? And unfortunately, about 30% of our respondents said that it's ad hoc, only when needed. And unfortunately, or hopefully not, they get only called by the board or executive management when there's a breach. So, but there are also said quite a number, 20 something plus percent on an annual basis, on a quarterly basis, also about 29%. So, while there's an importance of cybersecurity being highlighted, there's also a concern on the visibility of cybersecurity in boards and executive management. And for me, right now, I think the main risk or the main issue that banks are facing or financial institutions are facing is striking the balance of, like what I mentioned earlier, of trust, convenience, and enhanced digital security, which I call the digital payments or financial industry trifecta, and that is to make their digital platforms to be accepted fully and to be used by their customers in the long term. So that's my point of view.
All right, Philip, thank you for giving us an overview of the kinds of, cyber attacks or threats or top cybersecurity issues companies have been facing. Now, we go to Sparky of PearlPay. Sir, what have been the most common digital financial transactions being done by, Philippine financial institutions and Filipino consumers recently?
Okay, so there have been a study recently that there has been an increase of 47% in terms of digital transactions by value during this pandemic. And with that surge of transaction, of course, these are all e-commerce transactions, and it is paramount. It is imperative to implement cybersecurity protocols and to protect the institutions, and most importantly, the end customers that will be using the payment instrument. So in our case, helping the rural banks, of course, it's a highly regulated market. There are certain mandatory requirements set by BSP. Like for example, in our case, we are expecting to go live with our first rural bank within the year, and there are certain mandatory requirement that we need to accomplish, and one of them is the VAPT, or the vulnerability assessment penetration testing. So as a matter of fact, we are rendering the service of Secuna, helping us to complete that certification process, because our job is to transform the rural banks from passbook to digital bank, to offer mobile banking services, and meaning to say those applications, their core banking applications, are being migrated to the cloud. So those data must be secured, and we need to implement this type of best security practices, such as the VAPT.
Wow, interesting. All right. Now, Paulo,
Mhm.
of I mean, what is this? Paulo, how important is cyber security for a bank and a financial institutions?
Yes. Well, as the two speakers also previously mentioned, it's imperative, right? So, um, well, there are two sides of cybersecurity. There's cybersecurity for the institutions themselves, right? They have to make sure that their services are secure from internal and external vulnerabilities, and also there's a responsibility on the side of the customers, right, to make sure that the data that they have, or the data that they give out, especially to banks, are are given in a secure manner, right? But let me focus on the institutions, or the banks, or the companies, right? As Sir Philip mentioned, the increase in the usage of technology, or online tools, actually also accelerated the increase of vulnerabilities and cyber attacks. Um, Not just in the banking industry, but also in almost all sectors, right? In fact, even in schools, in just June, there were 30 schools hacked in the Philippines, right? So they're not just targeting schools; they're targeting all companies that process, store, and yeah, store information, right? And banks, and especially with BSP saying that there are, opening up digital banks, it's becoming more imperative. And one thing that companies need to do is, or especially banks, they need to have explore other ways of maintaining the security of their tools. The more traditional way, as I mentioned, is the VAPT, right? The vulnerability assessment and penetration testing, and this is usually done before a major release, or annually, biannually, right? And most companies stop there, and because they think that we set up all the defenses, we set up all the protocols in place, and then we have it tested one time, and that's it, right? But in fact, in the real world scenario, cyber criminals are attacking 24/7, right? And you wouldn't know when they find a vulnerability, and you wouldn't know when they're able to exploit a vulnerability, right? So that's one problem that we want to solve for companies, a way for them to discover vulnerabilities outside the traditional time sensitive VAPTs, right? And on another hand, of these companies need to be more open to to receiving reports about vulnerabilities from external sources. Currently, right now, since cybersecurity is very important, you need to be able to receive all types of reports. Reports meaning something like an ordinary user finding a vulnerability, because you have to you have to also realize that users can be cybersecurity researchers themselves, right? So once they're using your application, then they find the security vulnerability that's so easy to spot. They need to have a way to communicate it with the stakeholders, right? So the action can be done. There, in most cases, there are vulnerabilities found by external sources, but these vulnerabilities are not able to reach the proper people inside the company, and that's why some companies get hacked. In fact, in 2019, there was a study that it took around an average of 206 days before a company that was breached to find out that they were breached. Right. So imagine half a year. There were cyber criminals going inside or penetrating, stealing information from a company that they didn't know, right? Until someone just stumbled upon it, probably, or a ransomware has been deployed, right? So it's very imperative. It's very important. It's and we're happy to see that the government is starting to require that, especially for regulated entities such as financial institutions.
Thanks, Paolo. Now, I think I have to go back to Mr. Philip. As Sparky mentioned that we are now transferring to data to the cloud, I think it's important to ask how banks and financial institutions how they can boost their cybersecurity capabilities. Others can answer to Philip.
Yeah. But I don't have a single answer to this,
Mhm.
unfortunately. So please bear with me, uh, because that's how we view cybersecurity. It's a holistic thing. It's not only about technology, actually. And I know that my co-panelists will agree here that cybersecurity is not a technical issue, but this is really a governance issue, which requires key attention from management and the board, and it requires the whole organization. Cybersecurity is the responsibility of everyone. It's not only by IT. So let me address that question with a couple in a couple of fronts. On the people side, I think banks and financial institutions now more than ever would need to educate their employees and at the same time their customers about the risk of cybersecurity, about not clicking that link immediately and being mindful of the emails that they receive and not believing everything that they receive is somebody from a valid person. So there has to be what I call the human firewall mentality. And this is a challenge I know for many banks, financial institutions, or organizations in general, because conveying that message of the importance of cybersecurity and letting the people make very good decisions on how to handle potential security attacks so that they don't have to click that attachment, that link, or not be prone to social engineering tactics by these bad people. So that's one for me. On the people side, it's enhanced awareness to employees and also to customers. Second thing that I like to give as an advice is the living the secure by design principle. And secure by design is putting the cybersecurity requirements way back early in the innovation process or in the system development process, or even if it's in agile, it has to be way back early at the planning stage. And the way that we see it is that if an organization would have such practice, there will be better products, there will be better security on the products that they will come out in the market. And not only that, there are also some economical benefits of fixing security bugs at the early stage of the innovation process or in the development process. So, for example, if you identify a vulnerability at the early stages, planning stages, as compared to identifying vulnerabilities when a system is already in production, the cost to fix that security bug when it's already in production is 30 times more expensive than the cost if you fix it during the early stages of the development life cycle. So, for example, if you found the security bug in the design stage, on the early stages, the cost is 1 peso. But if it's already in production, the cost to fix the security bug is 30 times more, 30 pesos. So there are also economic benefits by putting security by design. Another thing that I could offer, given that our employees are many of our banking and FSI employees are working at homes, then there should be better identity and access management controls or a program. And I know that the IAM programs of companies, especially of banks, are being accelerated right now because of that concern. This is a primary control that you will have right now at this time of a distributed type of environment, so that you will know that the one accessing your system is really the right person, the right employee. And the IAM program are also right now being aggressively being extended to the customers as well, so that not only do we see that there's more rigidity in the KYC process that are being conducted by banks because of the onslaught of the online applications to do the digital banking. KYC together with IAM would be a very good control to ascertain that the right people are accessing your systems. Also, implementing a fraud and monitoring process or a system is in place, given the number of incidents of fraud also happening right now in the digital platform. So this is also in order. Um, One concern that banks and financial institutions are experiencing right now is probably the gap of talent. We don't we it's hard to come by with qualified cybersecurity defenders nowadays, and we it's also hard to retain them actually, because they are in demand as of this moment. So there's a big gap, and they are in demand. We see a lot of these cybersecurity defenders in financial institutions moving from one company to another in a very short time, because there's a demand for the talent and the skill. So with this shortage, we also see that companies should be looking into adopting automated solutions, like the security orchestration and automation response tools, wherein it could automate a lot of the manual manual interventions that are being done by currently by your security operations center personnel. So that might be also a way to handle if you have a skill shortage or manpower shortage right now. And probably last point is to better manage third parties right now. Outsourcing is a key strategy for many organizations, and in outsourcing, we cannot deny the fact that you are also outsourcing the information in the third party. So while the functional responsibilities with the third party, the accountability of the data of your customers or your employees' data, even while in the third party, is still with the primary organization. It's still with you. And so we're seeing that there has to be more rigidity in how we look into our third parties and how they handle our information that they are processing or storing or transmitting on our behalf. So yeah, those are just some things that I like to share on this.
Thank you, Philip. Now, I'd like to hear from Sparky of PearlPay. How do you do that at PearlPay?
Okay, actually, I like the term used by Philip, which is actually what we are practicing here at PearlPay, the security by design. As a matter of fact, it requires me to write an internal blog post, among all the PearlPay team members, a 7-part series, because my background is in the IT banking industry for more than a decade. And basically on that 7-part series, I've laid down, some of the lessons that we have learned. The cybersecurity incidents happens, of the biggest banks, and for based on experience, actually, okay, this is an actual incident. My wife, she booked a movie ticket because we wanted to watch a movie, Infinity Endgame, which is the Avengers Endgame. So wanted to be cool and for out of convenience. So instead of buying it over the counter, she booked it online, and she used her ATM card, which is issued by one of the big banks. And this big banks actually, I know this big bank, they have implemented EMV chip card, they implemented 2FA, two-factor authentication. Actually, they have a multi-million-dollar investment on the cybersecurity. Unfortunately, what happened was there was a security breach on the merchant side, and that is something beyond the control of any financial institution. So there was a breach, whereas all of the transactions for some reason has been compromised. And one of those transactions is actually my wife's ATM. Although the card number is masked because it follows the PCI DSS payment card industry data security standards, all the card number and personal information are being masked. So even though a hacker was able to obtain that information, it's still pretty useless. And these hackers, as mentioned by Paolo earlier, they have the time. Actually, 24/7 they are doing the attack. So what they did, because the information that they have obtained from that specific merchant is pretty useless, what they did is they created a phishing website. And having the mask card number, I know the bank, the hacker knows already the bank, and the email address, basically the login, the username, right, which is an email address. So what they did, they sent an email blast. Unfortunately for my wife, she was using an old email, because the email as of today, like for example, a Gmail account, would most probably actually filter via spam if it's if it contains a dangerous links. And unfortunately for that specific email, it didn't pass. The spam filter let it through. So on the primary inbox there was now a phishing email. And now, of course, when she read it, of course, it contains the transaction, because the hackers knows already that there's a specific transaction on that particular merchant booking of online movies. So somehow, and the subject is fraud security concern for your transaction on a specific merchant. And suddenly there's the name of the bank. And then for my wife, she clicked the link, and good thing there was a 2FA, two-factor authentication implemented by this bank. So now I was at the meeting of my meeting, and suddenly I received a text message, "Daddy, are you trying to log in on our online banking account? Because I'm continuously receiving an OTP." And for me, my answer actually, no, actually I'm in the middle of the meeting. So I asked her to call the bank and then immediately temporarily suspend the online banking access. Um, Unfortunately, well, good for my wife, there was no fraud losses, because we are able, thanks to the 2FA implemented by the bank, we are able to prevent the fraud losses. But for because these hackers, they are not only hackers on technology, but they are also social hackers. And what happened was there was a lot of victims in that particular incident. Just imagine, all for a certain period of time, all of the transactions that made through that ATMs from across all the big banks has been compromised. And although thousands of users has been, there was a fraud losses. And learning from that experience, the banks, rest assured, the banks, they have been investing multi-million dollars for cybersecurity. PCI DSS is in place. Payment card industry data security standards is being in place to secure that all the data is being masked upon transmission. But of course, there are endpoints that needs to be protected, and one of that endpoints is actually the merchants. Of course, that's another endpoint. But most importantly is to create a fraud awareness, a cyber threat awareness for the end users, right? For the individual that are using digital payments infrastructure. So in that sense, I thought part of that 7-part series, for the rural banks, what's our game plan, right? What's our game plan? Security wise, we will adhere security by design, two-factor authentication. It's already in our arsenal. But how can we, create a massive fraud awareness to the end users? And we're going to need the help of the financial institution, as well as to the end customers that will be using the platform. This is now the security and convenience, right? And we need to educate the end customers and to create an awareness about the cybersecurity threats. And it is. I agree with Philip. for the banks, right? Fraud losses is another, it's one thing, but most importantly is the trust to the brand. And true enough, my wife has been traumatized, because of that incidents. And for a time, she's not using any online activities. All are on cash on delivery, simply because of that incidents. Considering that there was no fraud losses but because of human behaviors, we tend to fear, right? To have that fear. So trust is being affected here, and once trust has been affected, of course, it's an opportunity loss for the banks, as well as for convenience for the end customers. So we need to create or at least educate cybersecurity threats and fraud awareness for the end customers, because majority of the time, the one who opened the door for these hackers is not actually coming from the banks, because banks, arguably, is much more difficult to penetrate in terms of, I'm not saying they're impenetrable, but in terms of degree of difficulty to hack between an end customer and a bank, it's much easier to penetrate, an email, a phishing email of an end customer, rather than to penetrate the breach, to have a breach network, a network breach of these financial institutions.
Thank you, Sparky. And now we go to Paolo. Do you have something to add to that, Paolo, on
Yeah.
how financial institutions can ensure the security of their digital assets and data?
Yeah, so as Sir Philip and Sparky mentioned, no, na, we need the help of the institutions themselves, the banks and the users, but we often leave out a big community that we can actually tap, and these banks can actually tap. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with the term white hat hackers, right? So white hat hackers are actually security researchers who companies or banks can actually hire to try to attack their system. Right? Most banks, most companies, they only focus on the defense, right? Put up all these defenses, and as Sparky mentioned, all these defenses has been put in place by the banks. But the thing that they didn't check, or they didn't at least look at, is how attackers would look at these defenses and go around it, right? So that's one thing that we think that banks need to start accepting, or at least trying out to tap that community, that white hat hacker community, and try to to leverage on their skills or their knowledge on how to attack these defenses, and then learn from how they can defend from the attacks that they find. So these most of these vulnerabilities or exploits that cyber criminals find are actually the ones that are not very creative, right? So they're very, very creative. They have lots of time in their hands, as Sparky mentioned. So they find all new technologies, new ways to penetrate systems. So these companies need to be able to keep up, right? And I do agree on the side of the consumers. They need to be more aware. They need to be educated. However, of course, the information that needs to be educated to them needs to be updated as well. And the best way to update this is also to find out what attackers are thinking, what attackers are trying to do, or what are the creative ways that attackers are using or implementing to go around the defenses, right? And yeah, so for us at Secuna, that's what we're trying to push. No, there's a community of white hat hackers that can help you out, find out how attackers can actually penetrate your system. Even though your systems are, defended by million-dollar tools, there are still ways for these attackers to come in. And mind you that not attackers in the Philippines are not just Filipino attackers. Right? These are global attackers. They have different ways of thinking. They have different ways of attacking. They have different experiences. So banks need to be ready for that, not just defense-wise, but to go into their minds and try to find the vulnerabilities that these attackers might find before they get exploited. And the best way to do that is actually to tap the that side or the allies in the hacking space, right? We just need to to take away that thinking that if you say a hacker, it's already automatically bad, right? So there's another community that they need to take a look at, and not just the banks and the the consumers, but also this white hat community.
Paulo, there's a related question, from our
Yeah.
audience. What are the key indicators we need to check on a website? Maybe let's include apps to ensure that we
Mhm.
are transacting safely, especially e-commerce sites.
Yeah. So, well, one obvious indicator is the domain, right? So
Mm.
if you're going to you need to make sure that the domain is the correct domain, like bank.com, for example. If it's the domain of the bank, it's probably safe. And there it's hard to pinpoint the by just looking, right. But they also need to look at the tools that the site or the bank offers. Like, for example, do they offer 2FA, right? Some even offer multi-factor authentication, whereas you get an SMS OTP and you also get an email verification before you're able to withdraw. So that's one good security feature. And also, if there are ways for you to easily block a card whenever you see there's another or block a transaction, if ever if ever there are suspicious transactions. So those are the types of tools, not really indicators, but more of tools that you should look at in banking applications that can help you secure your data.
Yeah. Could I add a bit on that?
Sure,
Uh,
sure, sure.
yeah, RJ. And just a simple advice. If the link is coming from another person, don't click it.
Hmm.
Don't click it. Don't click it.
Yes.
Most likely, if I cannot be 100% sure, right? But it's 99% sure that it's going to lead you to a rogue banking or online
Mhm.
banking website. So don't click it.
So I want to add to that also. No?
Sure.
That's perfect, right? So don't click, especially if you didn't do any action that would that you'd expect confirmation from the bank, right? And one thing that also consumers need to think, understand is there's such a thing as spoofing, right? Spoofing the email, because that's one tip that usually banks say that take a look at the email from where did the email come from. If it didn't come from us, it probably is phishing attempt, right? But now there is a way, actually, ever since there's been a way to spoof an email address. So it can come from support@bank.com, for example. It looks like a legit email because if you look at the from email, it's the email from the bank. It's usually the email that you get, the email that sends you those types of information, those types of links. But there's a way. Actually, it's a very easy way to spoof that now. Someone can do it in 1 minute and send you an email coming from this X
Mhm.
bank, right? And it would look legit. So, and if you click the link, you're brought to a fake website. So that's one thing to be mindful of. If you didn't do anything that would render or would actually, you should expect an email from the bank. Don't click it, right? And if it's suspicious, if you feel suspicious, just call the bank, right? Don't click. Or if it says, hey, you need to change your email because I change your password because it's been X days that you need to, that you haven't change your password, click this link to do so. Instead of clicking the link, just go to your bank and change your password. So if there are certain actions that you can do, just going by directly going to the bank and logging in without clicking the link, I highly suggest that you do so. Right. So just be very paranoid on links in emails.
Yes. Thank you, Paulo. Sparky, do you want to add something? Do you also want to say that we have to be paranoid?
Yeah, with my wife's experience, actually that's true. The email that was received, by my wife was, it was from as if it was from the bank. So it's as Paolo mentioned earlier, it's today it's pretty easy now to spoof an email. So as if it was a legitimate. The .com was really from the bank. Now, so we made some, as a fintech practitioner. So we made some testing out of that email. So I forwarded that email to my Gmail account and then to another email account, and true enough, the spam filter works. The Gmail actually, they have a spam filter, red flagging the that specific phishing email, and providing some important note that this could be a phishing email, as a red flag, automatically filtered by the spam filter of Gmail. Now on the other email, actually it let it, it passed the spam, and that specific email went to the primary inbox. So chances are you will read, right? And as aforementioned, a part of the email is that they mentioned the specific transaction made by my wife on a specific merchant, and then the subject is fraud security. So, but digging down, the moment you now click the link, it's actually now, of course, it's now a phishing website, right? So I totally agree with Philip and with Paolo to, instead of clicking the link, it's better, go to the browser and manually type the bank's domain, the bank's website. That would be, it could be avoided. Actually, it could be avoided. So in our, well, this is our, what's the lesson learned? Number one, this is based on personal experience. Have a strong spam filter. Gmail works at least 50% of the time, or even higher, right? To filter those phishing email. And then second is, never click the link. It's okay to be paranoid, and then just manually type the domain of the bank or the financial institutions.
Yes, Sparky, thank you. Now we have another question for everyone also. This is from our audience. How will you assess banks and financial institutions' readiness in fighting cyber attacks or crimes? In the same manner, do you think that the government has enough policies or regulations instituted to curb or prevent online bank frauds? Who would like to take this?
Yeah, can I
Yes,
give
Philip.
my point of view on this? Regulatory wise for financial services institutions, we have the BESP Circular 808 on IT risk management, 951 on business continuity, 982 on information security, and 1019 for as an extended guidance for cybersecurity. So we have an abundance of regulations, especially for BSFIs, or those that are supervised by BSP, and abundance of guidances as well, and and for the banks, that BSP is very rigorous in enforcing those circulars, and I think at that end we're doing a really a good job as an industry and as a regulator. That's why many of the financial services institutions are really would be more difficult to penetrate eventually, and like what mentioned also by Sparky a while ago, that it's really sometimes in the peripheral systems or relationships that are being exploited by these bad people. So for my point of view, also since I've been a CISO in Asia wide and also in North America, I know from a regulations perspective, especially on financial services institutions, that we have one of the more rigorous and the more stringent policies and regulations. And I've seen this in almost all parts of Asia. I've seen the regulators' stance on cybersecurity. And in the Philippines, we have one of the more rigorous ones.
Thank you, Philip. So, anyone who would like to add to that? How we are going to assess our banks and financial institutions' readiness in fighting cyber attacks, and do we have enough policies or regulations?
Okay, yeah, actually, I can
Yeah.
attest to that as a tech provider to the to the rural banks. We are even our contracts are actually being reviewed by the BSP. Even the commercial contracts, just to ensure that we have enough support. What's the service level agreement between the vendors and the banks? It's being actually reviewed by the BSP to help the rural banks implement those guidelines mentioned in Circular 808. 1019, we are really put that everything into practice. So I can attest to that as a fintech provider for these rural banks.
Yeah, it's Sparky, right? If I'm not mistaken, in 1019 it says if there's a cyber breach, you have to report it within 48 hours, if I'm not mistaken.
That is
And
correct.
that's stringent. It's across the region. I tried to check what are the reporting requirements. We have the most stringent with regard to cybersecurity breach requirement.
Yes, that is
Report.
correct. So that's why even in our monitoring tool, just to ensure that our network, although of course the way we execute it, we're using a virtual private cloud, those types of security standards. But to adhere to those guidelines, actually we made some automated monitoring tools, right? And so that if once it's breached, actually at least we can comply to that 48-hour. To notify the not just BSP but even the Data Privacy Commission, the DPC.
Mhm. We have last question here from our audience. Can you mention the best practices done currently by banks and financial institutions in securing their customers' data online transactions? Because you keep on mentioning that they have to be paranoid now. They want to feel secure that banks are doing the best practices. From your experience, I think
Yeah,
yes, Philip.
I think the banks have also abundantly are providing such guidance to the customers. That's why when you log into an online banking application, I saw a couple of online banking, local online banking application. The first thing that you will see is a splash screen, a big screen, and reminding you about phishing. Don't trust this. We do not ask this information from you, etc. And these are the hotlines, etc. And we are protecting your privacy, etc. There are also data privacy notifications in their respective websites. So I think that the banks and many financial institutions also, because it's driven by regulation, they have to do that. They have to do that, and they're actively doing those awareness things. So probably now more than ever, it has to be enhanced given the threats that are also looming and that are also increasing. So from my take, I think it's really on the customer awareness or employee awareness that could be improved eventually, until we have that, like what I said earlier, the human firewall, and that individually, since we protect ourselves, then the whole system, the whole ecosystem gets protected as well.
Thank you, Philip. Paolo, you have your own observations?
Yes, I think there are some banks that really give or offer a lot of tools for you to secure your account now. So my recommendation is take a look at those tools and make sure that you use them. Right? So most banks are require 2FA, but take a look if your bank also has that way for you to remotely block your card, block your account if ever it's needed. There's also a bank that I'm using that whenever there is a suspicious transaction, even if I'm the one doing the transaction, they send an SMS to me saying that, hey, we blocked your card, but if you say that you are the one transacting, just reply and we'll unblock your card. So things like that. So there's certain banks that offer that, and if if you come across those, just make sure that you understand how to use it, and and use them. Right? And the banks are doing those for you to help you out to secure your account.
Thank you, Paolo. Now it's time, I think, for our closing statements, and we have to start with Paolo.
Hmm.
Paolo?
Yes. So, well, as we mentioned in the discussion, the increase in usage is also the increase in threats and risks on the side of the banks, and most especially the side of customers. Right. So, cybersecurity is a shared responsibility. Right. It's a responsibility of the banks, and it's responsibility of of the consumers. So, consumers need to step in also and make sure that what they do online, when they use their banking, online banking, they use all the tools that the banks offer, right? And understand, and be a little bit more observant and aware of what you're doing, especially using your bank. And for the banks, we suggest that they open up to to other communities, such as the community, the cybersecurity research community, that went to so they can receive reports if ever there are vulnerabilities found in their application. So they need to step up and have this put in place a cybersecurity program that will govern this type of discussion, or at least collaboration with that community.
Thank you, Paolo. Now, Sparky?
Okay, thank you, RJ. So yeah, actually, there are two things, two key things that's being implemented by the financial institutions, as well as with their corresponding tech providers. Number one is the fraud prevention. Of course, fraud must be prevented, and then in the event that there's a suspicious transaction, there must be a fraud detection tool, right? So just like what happened to based on the experience of Paolo, even though he was the one who's using it, but there was a tool that temporarily suspended the account due to suspicious transaction. Probably it was either out of spending pattern, or that particular merchant has been identified as a point of compromise, whereas previous security breach has been experienced with that specific merchants. So those are the key tools being implemented in the financial institutions. But as aforementioned, just like what Paolo mentioned earlier, it is a shared responsibility by the financial institutions, by the tech providers, as well as, most importantly, by the end customers. So just like, as an end customer, just like how we are protecting our wallet, our cash on our wallet, right? So we are securing those our wallet, and of course, the moment we step in, and online transactions, it will stay. This is now the new normal. So we need to adapt, and we need to be familiarized, and to be aware of these cyber threats, right? Because online digital transaction is here to stay.
Thank, thank you, Sparky. Now, Philip?
Yeah, I'd like to end by giving this thought to everyone. Given the shift in the business landscape right now, many of the financial services institutions, the banks, and those in the payment industry, are trying to shift to more digital channels, and because of this, we also want to maintain customer loyalty. Right? We want to maintain customer loyalty, that they will not look at another bank, that they will not look at another payment service provider, and we want to maintain them, especially those who are transitioning from a traditional way of doing transactions to the online, because later on, if they realize that a certain organization is providing better customer experience, better convenience, or more convenience in facilitating certain things, then there will be shifts in loyalty. And in order, so that's the order: customer loyalty, provide a good customer experience, provide also convenience, and the enabler to all of these things for customer loyalty to be there is trust. Your customers would have to trust you, and that's the only way for them to will continuously use your platforms. Just like what Spark was mentioning a while ago, the wife didn't use online banking for some time because there was an issue of trust. And an enabler of trust, from my perspective, is security. So security for me right now is a basic ingredient to trust, and trust to customer convenience, to customer experience, to customer loyalty. So from my perspective, that's how the chain rolls up. That's why in this analogy, I'm conveying that security is something like salt. That's something that you will look after the taste of a dish. And if it doesn't have salt, then even if it's beautiful, even if it looks with all the other ingredients, if it doesn't have salt, then it will not taste that well. So I like to leave you with that thought. That's why security is a basic ingredient, especially in the transformation initiatives that we're doing to maintain our customers.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Paulo, Spark, and Philip, for giving us your time and lending us your expertise. And of course, to this session's partners, Security Bank, the Philippine Star, and Olern. To our audience, thank you for being part of this engaging session. Be sure to tune in to Business World's social media pages to be updated on our next projects. Again, this is RJ, and this has been the Business World Insights. Good afternoon.